Eleanor of Aquitaine was one of the most powerful and fascinating personalities in feudal Europe. At age 15, she married Louis VII, King of France, beginning in the union of her vast possessions to the river Loire to the Pyrenees. Only for a few years later, at age 19, she knelt in Cathedral of Bursley before the celebrated Abbot Bernard of Colfax, offering him thousands of her vessels for the Second Crusade. It was said that Queen Eleanor appeared at Bursley dressed like Amazon woman with her friends, galloping through the crowds of the White Horse, urging them to join the Crusades. While the church may have been pleased to receive her 1,000 fighting vessels, they were less happy when they learned that Eleanor, attended by 300 of her ladies, she planned to go to help tend the wounded. At least that's what was her explanation. The presence of Eleanor, her ladies, and wagons of female servants were criticized by commanders throughout her adventure. They dressed in armor to try and look fierce and tough like the Amazon women of old, but mostly they were scorned and laughed at. Her husband, Louis, demanded that Eleanor followed him to Jerusalem. Eleanor, furious, announced to one of all that her marriage was not valid in the eyes of God, for they were related through some family connections to an extent prohibited by the church. In 1152, the marriage was annulled and her vast estates reverted back to her control. Later on, she was married to King Henry II from the British Empire. They had the famous King John and King Richard. That was their mother. We all know the story of King John and King Richard, how King Richard was the good king, King John was the bad, selfish king that wanted everybody to pay him taxes over taxes over taxes. The Queen Eleanor, she taught her sons to be bold, loyal, and, if at times, ruthless, because that's what you had to do to keep contact of your power and of your royalty. Oftentimes she would argue with her husband that she was the better of the two, and that Richard, in her case, was the favorite child. She was definitely an inspirational woman, considering that she thought that men and women had equal rights, even though that her husbands didn't agree, but she was still bold and did things that women shouldn't have done in a century. She was an inspiration to many other women to continue on with their dreams and their honorable roles later on and centuries later. Eleanor of Aquitaine was definitely one of my, you could say, inspirations to keep on going into where I want to go, because she had the courage to do what was necessary despite what other people thought of her. And that's Eleanor of Aquitaine.